Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us. We are live right now in two separate courtrooms, so we're going to break down everything that's happening, and you're joining us at a great time. First up, let's tell you that closing arguments are underway in the penalty phase in the Scott Nelson trial out of Florida. You can actually go to lawandcrime.com right now to watch them. The prosecution has finished their closing argument. Now the defense is continuing on with theirs. Give you a bit of background about this case. After the defendant got up on the stand and admitted to abducting and brutally murdering 56-year-old Jennifer Fulford, the jury found Nelson guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, carjacking, and robbery. Nelson took Fulford from the home where she worked as an assistant and nanny, stole money from her bank account using her ATM card, and then proceeded to brutally kill her by wrapping her head and face in duct tape and stabbing her multiple times in the back and chest. Now, that same jury that convicted him, they're going to have to determine what the punishment should be. Will they recommend life in prison or the death penalty? This has been a fascinating case to go and to follow, and I have to tell you, you never know what's going to happen next given the twists and the turns in this case. I mean, let's just talk about what happened this past week. The defendant made outbursts during proceedings, or we could talk about when he took the stand once again in the penalty phase and requested that he be executed, not even joking. And let's just talk about what happened yesterday, when two jurors reported that a man yelled at them outside the courthouse screaming, "Nelson needed to fry," and then proceeded to strike a window, causing his hand to bleed. Not making this up, everybody. This is actually what's been happening. So you can go to lawandcrime.com to watch those closing arguments. Who knows what's going to happen next? Right now, we're going to talk about the Roy Coons case because we're live right now in that trial. And this is a fascinating trial about a Tennessee man accused of killing his 12-year-old neighbor. Roy Coons is charged with first-degree murder, felony murder, attempted rape, and aggravated burglary in connection with the death of Johanna Ortega, who was found dead on the floor of her family's mobile home back on August 10th, 2017. Johanna died from strangulation, and there was also evidence of blunt force trauma as well. Police indicated that there was no forced entry of the home. And yesterday we learned that Johanna, when she was home alone on the night in question, she sent her mom a text saying, "Someone's knocking on the door. I think it was the man who cuts the yard." Why does that matter? Because Roy Coons, the defendant, was hired by Johanna's mom to do that work. So this has been really interesting to see which way this is going. Now, DNA evidence is a huge factor in this case. The prosecution has said that Roy Coons' DNA has been found in that mobile home, both on the window and a cigarette butt. On the stand is a DNA analyst talking a little bit more about DNA in this case. We're going to jump live right now. Okay, let's break down what's happening right now. Joining me is Law and Crime legal analyst Gene Rossi. Gene, great to have you here on Law and Crime.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, let me ask you, I'm not hearing that bombshell evidence saying that the defendant's DNA was on the body or the karate belt or anything that really would say, oh my gosh, they clearly have him here. Are you hearing something different?
There's no game change testimony from Rachel Mack. What you have is a little tiny crumb of DNA, and it's consistent. If I'm the defense attorney, I'm going to jump all over this because it's consistent with him just going to the house, mowing the lawn, doing whatever he was required to do, and maybe leaving some DNA in the trailer or the home. It doesn't suggest that there was some massive murder of this tragic 12-year-old.
So based upon this DNA in the home, the text messages that came out yesterday from the victim saying that someone was knocking on the door and she thinks it's the person who cuts the yard, signifying Roy Coons, his proximity to the house, his relationship with the family. Is this a strong case by the prosecution?
I wouldn't say it's a strong case. It's definitely indictable, prosecutable. I wouldn't say it's a strong case. And that's probably why he's not pleading guilty. And he either feels they have a relatively weak case and or he maintains his total innocence.
So does the defense even, at this point, would you say they even need to call witnesses, or do they just keep striking at the prosecution's case bit by bit?
You got to play it by ear. You have to call audibles. See how much you can chip away. See how many seeds of reasonable doubt. And at the end of the government's case in chief, then you make the decision, do we need to even put on a case? So I don't think we can decide that now.
Okay, well, we're going to have to see which way it goes. Let's take a break and we'll jump back live. Stay tuned here on Law and Crime. Okay, Gene, we're still not seeing that bombshell evidence that I was hoping for, well, that a prosecution would be hoping for, but it's their duty to put forth all this evidence, even if it doesn't help them, correct?
Absolutely. There is one little bit of information that just came out. There is under the Joanna's fingernails a male DNA. They just couldn't do a profile. So a male, maybe she was clawing and didn't get enough. Who knows? But that is a little bit helpful to the prosecution. Yes,
we've heard that as well, male DNA contributor for other items of evidence, but hasn't been attached to Coons. Now, the question is, she died from strangulation, and there was also evidence of blunt force trauma. Does that give you an indication about who committed this attack? Because it would seem to suggest somebody that's probably has a lot of strength, and somebody maybe that has a certain height and weight. I mean, you tell me, does that give you an indication about who her attacker is?
Well, it strongly points towards a male who has strong physical attributes. And of course, that would be Mr. Coons, because that's what he does all day, 24/7 almost. So that does help. The thing that troubles me is it's such a violent murder of Joanna that I find it hard to believe there's not a hair fiber or something that could connect the defendant to the scene, other than the tiny, tiny, tiny amount of DNA they did find.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that maybe somebody came? Again, the idea put forward by the defense is, okay, you want to talk about this text message that she says that, a man started knocking on the door, and that she said, I thought it was the man who cuts the yard. They really heightened the idea of the was, signifying that maybe it was Roy Coons, maybe he knocked on the door, but then he left, and then an alternative suspect came in and committed this crime. So the idea of someone came in and was planning to do this and maybe cleaned it up. I mean, again, there was no forced entry. She was murdered with the karate belt, not an outside weapon. So what do you think?
You know what, I got to ask, motive is always important in any case. And it's not an element of the crime. And the basic motive for Mr. Coons is he saw opportunity, he had the means, but I don't know where the motive is. Was he stalking her? Did he have fantasies? Is there any evidence that he had gone over the house before and made comments about the daughter? We don't see any of that. He's just a person who mowed lawns in a neighborhood. It could strongly suggest that he was at the house, left, and then by coincidence, the real killer just happened to follow in his path.
Yeah, and look, our viewers would know certain things that the jury doesn't know, that he's been convicted of 30 offenses, and maybe they're saying, oh, well, that's just a criminal mastermind, a criminal, that's the heart of a criminal. We know that he has been charged with the attempted rape of a child, so we're getting you could think you formulate a certain motive there, but again, it's not our job to do it, it really is for the prosecution. So we're going to take a break. I want to let our viewers know that when we come back, we may jump live into the Scott Nelson courtroom. Closing arguments are underway. Stay tuned.